And today I want to tell you straight ahead from our overview that we would like to take a concessionary approach in China. That is, we want to make compromises, we want to make concessions, and we believe this is the best way to protect our long-term interests in China. Now, the Chinese anti-monopoly law stipulates that there are certain factors which the authorities should consider when they review the application of such acquisition, and we have summarized them into a stakeholders interest table, as you can see from the slides. Now there are a couple of players to consider. Obviously, if we are talking about the Coca-Cola shareholders, they will be benefiting from this deal, so I will not further drill into that. Now the three players which we have to consider is first the consumer. Now, why is the consumer concerned about this deal? Because of 2 points. First of all, it's the possible increase in price, because as Coca-Cola gains a larger market share in China, they will have stronger bargaining power to dictate the prices. But more importantly, it's about the national sentiments.
Now, I believe my colleague has explained to you there are quite a number of concerns over different stakeholders in China. And therefore, our team is of the opinion that we have to take the approach on a concessionary basis. We are not, in the sense that, are afraid of these different stakeholders, but we put the long-term interest of Coca-Cola as a first priority. We believe that with this approach, would we be available to further establish our interests in the long run, say for example, entering in different food or beverage businesses or other geographical locations around China. Now, having these in mind, the next question is, what conditions should be imposed, and why these conditions?
Why these conditions might not only, it not only doesn't bring about a lot of negative impacts on us, sometimes it might even bring about benefits by keeping the Huiyuan brand as described by our conditions. So there are actually 3 reasons why I would say that the conditions is not as bad as we are thinking now. First of all, you need to think about why Coca-Cola is trying to buy Huiyuan. Well, intuitively speaking, you think that this is a horizontal acquisition. We're going to buy Huiyuan so that in combination our market share is going to be larger. But according to some analysts, actually one of the major objectives and benefit of buying Huiyuan is not only horizontal, but also vertical. Huiyuan has a lot of interest and assets in the upstream resources and assets.
And therefore, within the 2 years of application process, we are going to launch public relations campaign as to the brand of Coca-Cola to address more importantly the social and cultural issues aspects in China. For example, building schools in rural China, and also sponsoring worldwide or nationwide sports events in China. As in the case, it's mentioned that the Chinese public is getting more and more concerned about health issues in China, and this growing trend would hint us into promoting and giving more accents into the health aspects in China as well. And also, since my colleagues have also mentioned that the employees are very concerned about the post-acquisition employment level, and therefore we are going to still keep up on training some local employees, give them opportunities, and to show them the career development, or that to convince them that we are not going to just let them leave the company without compensation or just cruelly fire them after the acquisition period. In some, it would be cost-based synergy as well as revenue-based synergy stemming from the brand image of the Huiyuan brand, which would not be viable if we are pursuing a joint venture. And therefore, this would be the best option, sustainable, profitable, as well as most convincing to our Chinese government officials.
We have time for one last question, judges. And that's actually a quick one.
Is the price of the product going to go up or down?
I think for such an acquisition with such media hype, such attention all over the internet, price is sensitive because it relates to the lives of the people. Then it relates to social stability, which is the primary concern of the government authorities. So we will say that it is not wise to change the price drastically. Though Coca-Cola is actually, according to NS, paying a pretty much high premium to the acquisition. But Coca-Cola spent billions of dollars on marketing, and we don't think that the price will have such an impact on the activities after the deal.
Alright, we still have one minute left if there's any last minute questions.
If you were, from the government's perspective, you talked a lot about how the brand can benefit Coca-Cola, but what do you think Coca-Cola can do to benefit China or this particular development of this market in China?
Yes, because from a more macro perspective, we'll say China's concerned two things: economy, social stability. So this relates to a political aspect. The Chinese economy is very much investment driven. So it is actually a hard decision for Chinese authorities to actually block the deal, because even for such a large MNC, large investor, you still block them, then it's going to bar other more beneficial potential investors in coming in. So investment driven leads to economic growth. If you bar this, this is going to open a very bad example. So we think that this is going to be a more symbolic meaning inside.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are Tsinghua team. In September 3rd, 2008, Coca-Cola announced its purchase with 66 shares of Huiyuan in its acquisition. Today, our team wants to present a strategy for the Coca-Colas to convince the Chinese authority to pass the deal, because in our strategy, we illustrate that this deal is worthwhile. The juicy is worth the squeeze. First, let me give you an executive summary. In this deal, we want to convince the Chinese authority from three parts. The first, this acquisition is definitely to integrate synergy effect of acquisition. And second part, it is beneficial to build ecosystem in Chinese beverage industry. And finally, this acquisition will help Coca-Cola to realize its corporate social responsibility. So furthermore, we would like to see what the law is about, what our parents say about our monopolies. From the anti-monopoly law from Chinese government, we see from the Article 28 that if we have a potential benefit which is clearly larger than the harm, we cannot prohibit this kind of merge. And another one is that we should emphasize on the public interest. And also, if we can have some conditions, we would also have this kind of merge be agreed by our government as well. So furthermore, our analysis we are going to as the following. That we first are going to say that we are beneficial for every of the business and from the industry analysis, and also a benefit for the whole society of China. And also we would like to have some conditions in order to better implement our benefits and also to reduce the harm as well. So this is the situation that we are the same or confident with our Chinese regulation. So that's okay for our Chinese regulation for this merge. So the dairy industry is structured as follows. Here are the farmers, and then they would put their produced milk to the milk stations. And then the milk stations will give the manufacturers, which we see every day on TV, that's doing the advertisement for the dairy products, such as that Mengniu, Yili, and Sanyuan. They are the ones who actually manufacture the milk products. To say time, I'm not going to write it. But the problem with this is that because there is no integration in the whole value chain, so everybody is on their own. The farmers would put additives into the milk because they get such low price from the milk station, so they don't really have much profit. In order to profit, they have to put some poisonous things in the milk to make the milk look better. And the milk station, in order to pass the test for the manufacturers, they have to put some other stuff into the milk so that the milk becomes even more poisonous. And then because the milk is already so bad, so the manufacturers have to use even more additives into the milk. And in the end, what consumers get are just like poisonous milk.
But according to our calculations, currently, Hui Yuan's price has raised about 65%, which represents for the consumers' confidence in this company. At the same time, Chinese juice industry's CAGR is about 16%. So we believe that in the future, not more than like 10 years, the Hui Yuan's stock price will raise to our buying price, which means that our buying price is not so high as someone worried. And also, Coca-Cola has a global revenue for about 200 billion RMB, and the buying price is only about 16 billion RMB.
Okay, thank you very much, Tsinghua University. We'll now have 10 minutes.
And in your presentation, you talked a lot about the synergies and how this will benefit both of your brands, and I think some of the smaller producers have raised concerns to the government as well. What do you propose to say to the government in response to that, or are you not concerned about what the other producers feel about the joining up of the two brands?
That's actually why we separate our strategy in 3 layers. The first one is directly we have to pass the regulation or requirements. That's what we're going to say to the government. And also because the government is going to say, oh, well, the other competitors are like talking to me right now, they concerned about this. So we have the second layer that to our industry shareholders, our competitors, our suppliers and distributors, what other things to say to them. That's what I just mentioned, like we are going to provide a healthier environment for the growth of this whole industry. So Coca-Cola, the giant beverage maker, wants to expand itself more by taking over the local juice maker, Hui Yuan. Whenever it goes to a deal, one party has to give up something in order to get what he wants. And he has to negotiate with different parties to get what he likes. And then today, we're going to present to you what Coca-Cola wants and what it can do to achieve this goal. In the first place, let's see Coca-Cola's strategy. Coca-Cola's goal as the company as a whole. The company wants to have an all-directional beverage company. So in China, it wants to penetrate into the Chinese market with minimum impact and maximum gain. So let's see what Coca-Cola wants in this deal and what he can give up.
And then in phase 2, we are going to deal with the competitors. Remember, the competitors, what their concern is the market power. After we have acquired Hui Yuan, maybe they will be squeezed out of the market. And secondly, they concern about the price. They're afraid that we will gonna start a price war and lead to their failure. But as Coca-Cola, we want is upstream business. Yeah. So we will transform information that we will remain Hui Yuan as an individual brand. And secondly, we're gonna hold the price. And what we will deal with the competitors is through the Chinese way of doing business. We're gonna have golf, have massage, have spa with the big boss of the competitors, and try to build a good relationship with them, and try to communicate the idea we have, and try to convince them that they are not going to be sacrificed their interest here. So let's move on to the next part, that we deal with public. So for the people in China, they're afraid that our acquire of the Hui Yuan will lead to failure of our national brand. The national brand will not exist in the future. But remember our goal. It's not to kill Hui Yuan as a brand. We will remain Hui Yuan as an individual brand. And how we're gonna approach to the public? We'll firstly select some media from web or some newspapers in the local area and try to communicate this information to the public. Let them convince that we are not killing the national brand. But however, we have to pay attention. We need to limit the exposure of this issue since the public, they have to calm down from their passion about the country. So as the two ways we are going to deal with the public relationship.
The first is Huiyuan is still an individual company and it is remain listed in Hong Kong. You know, we only buy the plantation of the corporate, not the whole company. And the second is we can develop the soft drink industry's R&D because we, Coca-Cola, has great research and development department. And we know that Huiyuan company is lagging behind in product development in China market. So we can do cooperation with Huiyuan company. We can help them with the product development and research. And we believe by doing this, we can improve the China soft drink industrial's R&D. And you know, we Coca-Cola, we think local, we act local. We do many, we are the official sponsors of 2008 Olympic Games. And we do many CSR, we do many charities. We have partnership with many local provinces and local governments. We want to act local and cooperate with the local company. The third one is trade. You know, the Ministry of Commerce is in charge of the China's international trade. By buying the Huiyuan corporate plantation, we can reduce the import from the Brazil. And via our excellent distribution model, we can also import more material to all over the world.
So we'll do first the first stage negotiation with the company as well as with the competitors in this week to get a primitive result and to get a first message to the public in the hearings. After that, there are 90 days before the Ministry of Commerce will make the decisions, during which time we will continually negotiate with Mr. Zhu to get an optimal price, as well as in the same time do the competitor and PR issues. And also, a very important thing is to file the different documents to the Ministry of Commerce. So this is our timeline. Now let's come to the financial projection and why we think acquiring the farms of Huiyuan is profitable for Coca-Cola.
So firstly, we think as a businessman, Mr. Zhu is different. Since he said he's really different. He said that you raise a business like a son, but you sell it like a soul. So what he concerned is money. And we have presented that we will give a very good deal price for him, which we think is a very good benefit for him. This is for his personal perspective. And secondly, for the cooperation, we think that as a local company in China, it's easier for him to fund the local suppliers in the future. And if he sells his plantation, it is profitable, then why not he sell it and build another?
Some people say marriage is a compromise. We say it's a collaboration. Similarly for Coca-Cola and Huiyuan today, if we can collaborate and capitalize on each other's synergies, we can achieve what we call the double happiness, or what the Chinese call 双喜. And this is the double happiness strategy. A very good morning to one and all. Allow me to introduce our team. My name is Andy, and my colleagues are Ekjun, Grace, and Marcus, and we are from Genesis Consulting. So today, we'll bring you through the double happiness strategy. Let's take a look at the value proposition of our group. This is where we are today. We have a 12.7% market share in juice segments in China, but primarily it's because of the money made in the juice drink segment. And we have also had a heavy investments made in the country. Now, we look at the two key issues that we have to address today. First, how do we manage stakeholders in view of Huiyuan acquisition, which involves the government, the local companies, as well as the people in China? And secondly, what are the terms of acquisition that we can think about if to face with the regulatory restrictions in the Chinese country. Now, addressing these key issues with the double happiness strategy, we can achieve where we will be. To gain upstream partnerships in China with Huiyuan, at the same time expand product segment reach, especially in the growing juice segment. And lastly, we will maintain a positive public sentiment in China for our brand, as it is something that is of utmost importance if we want to operate in this country. So in short, how are we going to go through this? Grace will walk you through our situation analysis.
Now, we need to understand the company they were about to acquire, Huiyuan's position. And its competitive advantages are in its plantations, over 4 million hectares, which gives it a cost advantage in terms of its price of its supplies for juices. It also has strong brand equity within the Chinese market, as seen from the public outcry over our acquisition, which is something we will address in our recommendation today. In terms of our presence, the Huiyuan is expanding its production bases to all over China to help to lower its distribution costs because of the proximity between its production bases and its distribution network. It also has a nationwide distribution network within China. Its weaknesses are its low utilization rate of new plants at only 40%. It also has rather slow product development with only one product in a year, a lack of incentive for dealers, unlike Coca-Cola's strength, as well as its marketing being relatively weak with rather low expenditure in marketing compared with its major competitors in the Chinese market. Overall, therefore, we see that a key takeaway is that there are several management operational flaws which have caused it to develop these weaknesses in recent years, and this is something which is holding back Huiyuan from progressing further as a Chinese company. Now, another key issue that we need to look at is the management of stakeholders in China. We understand that doing business in China is fraught with difficulties of managing expectations from the government, from local companies, and from the public through media channels.
Now, under the factor of whether they can still play a role in the juice market, if they do not acquire Huiyuan, then what? Well, there are possible alternatives. Number one, they could introduce their own brand. Number two, they could also take over other brands such as Tingyi and Nongfu. These are the other competitors below Huiyuan, and they are the second place in the market position for these two segments. Now, these may not be the best alternatives because you have to do further assessments of these companies, whether these companies are just as worthwhile to take over as Huiyuan. But these are the alternatives that they should look into in case the deal doesn't go through. Simply because, as we've mentioned earlier, they are in China for the long haul. So this is something that they cannot ignore. Now, aside from the markets, moving away from the markets, let's look at the production side. Now, we know that Coca-Cola, unlike Pepsi, does not have any plantations or any investments made in China, which will cripple their ability to compete in the market for fresh juices, simply because you need production facilities. So they could look into options such as purchasing, leasing, or even licensing these locations from people who do own them, maybe even from Huiyuan themselves. Now, keeping all of these in mind, I've already talked about two factors, and just one last thing we'd like to say is that maybe one last alternative they could consider is simply to target the Minute Maid segment and completely use that as their key competitive area within the juice market. But at the end of the day, all of these three factors put together should not cost them more than $2.3 billion US dollars, which is the expected price we've put on the cost of acquisition. If the cost of using any of these alternatives is way cheaper than this, then perhaps Coca-Cola should consider some of these alternatives and look into them further.
And we have identified several risk factors, and they include the risk of strict conditions imposed, and we do have to explore the possibility of exiting this acquisition if the conditions are too strict for us to accept. There's also the risk of integration, the Chinese backlash risk, and also the common cost problem that we are facing here. So I'll talk more about the integration risk. Well, we have to ensure that there's continual operational efficiency, but if we don't achieve that, this is going to weigh down our bottom line. And therefore, to mitigate this risk, there's a need for a feedback and a two-way mechanism for the company itself to actually control the cost that affects the bottom line.
Well, in terms of addressing the concerns of these local manufacturers, I think a lot of it will have to do with collaboration. In terms of the fact that we have economies of scale that we can provide them, for instance, in terms of perhaps helping them with infrastructure, with training development, we're not close to that because we do want to ultimately benefit the society at large. And this is in line with a lot of what Coca-Cola's efforts in other countries and even in China have been. And ultimately, because the Chinese government does want to achieve economic efficiency, and this clearly can be achieved through Coca-Cola purchasing Huiyuan, we hope that this will also convince local juice manufacturers that rather than posing a high barrier to entry, it actually allows for greater innovation and competition, which can also stimulate the market within China for these local